Hello there, welcome back to episode 3 of the INDSA Podcast 3.0, the show where we strive to everyone to choose the food that brings the good. I'm Jyosheeka, your host today, and here I have is my amazing co-host, Khoon Meng. So, Khoon Meng, tell our viewers a little about yourself.
Right, thank you Jyosheeka for having me here. So hi guys, my name is Khoon Meng. I'm also student dietitian from DN121 as well, and I'm studying at INDSA.
And as for our special guest for the episode, here we have Mr Georgen Thye. So some of you may recognize him from our previous season of the INDSA Podcast or from his very own cooking channel, Georgen Cooking. So welcome back to the show, Georgen.
Hello, hi, thank you so much for having me. It's good to be back.
Yeah, do you want to say a few words before we start?
Okay. So you are from
DN121.
DN121. So I'm from ND108. So and I'm the pioneer batch of IMU N&D course. So it makes me feel very old when you mention that. Yeah. So I'm an alumni of IMU. So I've been in the field of nutrition and dietetics for the past 13 or 15 years. So I have a good mix of clinical experience, community, and now corporate. Yeah. So it's good to be here.
That's interesting. Well, so for today's episode, it's going to be a gut buster, literally. So we're going to be talking about something that's often overlooked, but it also plays a massive role in our health, the gut. So in this episode, we'll go over the basics of what our gut health is and also how we can improve our gut health with our food consumption. So before we begin, I'd like to hear from the both of you. Why do you think it's important to address our gut health? For me, I've seen a lot of misinformation on the internet, like quote-unquote health news, talking about oh, you should do a colon cleanse or take detox drink and stuff like that for gut health. But I think that this is not backed up by evidence or no research has gone into it. So which is why I think as a student dietitian or a dietitian itself, I feel like it's quite important to address these things. So how about Georgen? You go first.
I couldn't agree more with what Jyosheeka just mentioned. So I think being a dietitian, we study a lot in terms of the entire digestive system. So to give more perspective, it's basically start from our mouth all the way stretch to the other end. Yeah. So when we hear about the gut digestive system, the first thing that comes to our mind is about digesting food and also absorbing nutrients as well. But for the past 10 years, I would say there are more and more studies that shows that actually our gut does more than just digesting food and absorbing nutrients. So it has been linked to mental health, it has been linked to skin health and also immune system as well. So, and now back to the questions, why gut health is important. I think it all explains if we are able to take good care of our gut. So if you indirectly and even directly take care of the other aspects that I just mentioned, immune health, skin health, and also mental health as well.
How about you, Khoon Meng?
For me, I think I would also agree with what Georgen and what Jyosheeka said in a way that like when we were talking about this before 10 years ago, there's usually just like, oh, what you eat, and then there's not too much conversation about it. But these past 10 years, like what Georgen has said, is really more geared towards not just like your physical health, but also your mental health, and how you eat would actually have a very profound effect on your health as well. So I think this is something that we shouldn't just go through like the TikToks and all those stuff to just get the information from, but rather we should get this information from like evidence-based sources, just to have a clearer picture of what we are getting into about the gut.
Yeah. And I do feel that TikTok sometimes can be a place or a route to actually get credible information, but you just have to be critical enough to really differentiate the facts from all the pseudoscience. And yeah, follow my TikTok. Get more information.
Couldn't agree a lot more. So let's start with the basics. How would you explain gut health as a simple concept for those who don't have a background in science or health sciences?
Okay, I think just now I've sort of explained the digestive system actually go beyond just the stomach. It also involves the mouth, the oral cavity, esophagus, and also on top of the stomach it will be the small intestine and the colon. as well. But when we talk about particularly gut health, right? So there's this thing that in the past, again, 10 years has been sort of come into the picture of the new field of science, which is the microbiome, which we are looking at the bacteria that is residing in the gut. So I would explain this as a simple concept as there's actually a bustling city in our gut. So it stays a trillion of bacteria and also yeast and fungi, and all of them come together as a community. They have their role to play. So they are good bacteria and they are also bad bacteria, and they work in symbiotically, I would say, the term, and sort of provide good health and also helps the body to maintain the function that it should be playing. So, and there are 100,000 species of bacteria in the body, strains, and from 400 to 500 species of them. So it's basically a small world residing in our gut.
Interesting. Actually, to my knowledge, what we've learned, regular bowel movement is an indicator of good gut health. Do you have any other indicators that we can look out for?
Going to the toilet regularly, I would say is one of the indicator. And by looking at your poop and your creation is also one of the way to sort of do a self-assessment. I mean, it might be funny to be obsessed with your poops, right? But this is one of the simplest assessment that you could do at your home. Just before you flush it, just take a look at your poop. So for a healthy poop, ideally it should be about 4 to 8 inches long. And then in terms of the appearance, right, it should be sausage-like, not too watery and not too tiny or hard. And then it should gently sink to the bottom of your toilet bowl. And the color should be from mild brown to dark brown. Anything that is overly pale can indicate of mild fat absorption. And blackish stool or red stool can sort of indicate internal bleeding as well. So this can be a way to sort of assess, your gut health. And just like we mentioned about, gut also linked to the immune system, to skin health, and also to mental health as well. So sometimes if you feel, stressed, if you couldn't sleep, if you have rashes that you couldn't explain, or if you just feel that your immune system has weakened, it's very hard for you to recover from a simple cold or flu. All of these could also be an indicator that your gut health may not be at its best.
Well, that's actually quite good to know and very knowledgeable too. So at least now our listeners can look out for any of these indications Georgen mentioned and take necessary precautions if otherwise, because you always want to look out for your health, right? But for some, maybe maintaining their gut health can be quite challenging. So are there any common challenges you encounter with patients usually?
Gut health, definitely I think the direct impact is basically from diet. So when we talk about gut health, we want to talk about getting the basic right, which is to have a balanced diet. But on top of that, there are a few nutrients that we want to really focus on, which is getting enough fiber, and also getting to make sure that we have enough good bacteria in our system, right? So I think one of the challenges is getting enough fiber. And then secondly is moving beyond diet, which I believe we'll be discussing more later. So if we move beyond that, focusing on lifestyle, I think managing stress. I think nowadays, to really be stress-free or really managing your stress well, I think this is one of the challenges that faced by a lot of people. And secondly is also be physically active, which is also very tightly linked with gut health as well, and getting enough sleep. So I think all of these lifestyle factors on top of diet is some of the challenge that I feel the people or patients that I came across has faced when it comes to taking care of their gut health.
And then, from these patients itself, you see, they often see a lot of gut-related diseases. So from what we've learned, usually colon cancer, there's IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, and also maybe Crohn's disease. So in, let's say, the Malaysian population, from your experience, is it common to see these kind of diseases?
From my experience, I would feel that these diseases, let's say like IBS, Crohn's disease, or even celiac disease. Celiac disease is not that prevalent in an Asian context, but for the rest, I think it is pretty much underdiagnosed, because when they come to us, it will usually be treated as intolerance and first of all, it's usually underdiagnosed. But when we go ahead and do more assessment, then all the symptoms and hints coming to us is that, oh, this patient might be suffering from IBS, and then we usually have this patient to go back to their gastro to do a further test to really confirm that. But moving beyond, let's take colon cancer as another very prevalent gut-related disease in Malaysia, which is very prevalent because it is the top most commonest cancer among Malaysian male, and the second most common among female in Malaysia. So yes, I would say it's pretty common among the patients that I've seen that is suffering from gut-related diseases that needed help. Yeah.
Interesting. So we'll take a short break and we'll be back to dive into how our diet affects the gut. See you later. And we're back. So now let's explore more on our favorite aspect, food. So there's so much to unpack for our love for food. So Khoon Meng, what are your thoughts on how the food we eat in relation to our gut?
Alright, thank you so much. First of all, I love food. We all love food. I feel that it's very important to take care of what we eat. What we consume directly affects our gut health. Maybe I'll just give a little example. I think Georgen has mentioned just now about the dietary fiber as well. Because with a good amount of dietary fiber, it can help promote regular bowel movement. I think we've mentioned that just now. As well as having growth bacteria, because there is good bacteria and also there's bad bacteria in the gut, and then it also promote the growth of the good bacteria, as well as aiding in toxin removal from the body. Now this is just a small example of how and what you eat affects your overall gut health, but we will be delving more into that later lah. Yeah.
That's a great way of putting it. So what about you, Georgen? What are your thoughts on that?
I would really much want to focus on the gut bacteria, which another term of calling this is gut microbiome or gut microbiota. So when we talk about gut health, I think now it's pretty much focusing on getting a balanced gut microbiome to make sure that they are diverse enough, they are balanced enough between the good and bad bacteria, and this pretty much directly linked to what we eat, what we put into our mouth, and our digestive system. So first of all, what feed on these tiny little organisms in our body? They actually feed on fiber, not every fiber, but the fiber that can be categorized as prebiotics. So prebiotics is a type of, is a subset of fiber that can be fermented or that can be consumed by these tiny little bacteria in our gut, and they thrive on and they flourish. Alright, so when they flourish, this good bacteria can also suppress the growth of bad bacteria, and in this way, we can sort of achieve the balance between the good and bad. So a good gut health should consist about 85% of good bacteria, and the remaining 15% should be the bad bacteria. So this is about getting the right type of fiber to feed this good bacteria. And other than fiber, we also want to talk about something called life cultures or probiotic. So probiotic is a living culture or living bacteria that we consume. So where can we get probiotics? Is mainly from fermented food. So I think some of the common fermented food that we know is like yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut, and also kombucha, which is a kind of fermented tea drink. They are good source of probiotics, which come externally, we consume. And we can also look into supplements as well. There are also all sorts of different probiotic supplements. Yeah. So that can be a source of where we get probiotic as well. So these are what is good for the microbiome in our body to thrive. So when we look at the other sides of things, right, there are also certain food that can deteriorate the gut microbiome. So which are the ultra processed food that is very high in sugar, high in unhealthy fats, and also high in sodium as well. So these type of foods is what that feed on the bad bacteria, and it can increase the inflammation in our gut, and also in a way cause different problems that is gut related as well.
And now that you mentioned about the ultra-processed food, so you mentioned that because it's high in sugar, salt, and also, could you also maybe talk about the high saturated fats?
Yeah, it's part of the package. It could be high in saturated fats, which is bad fat, that if you consume too much, not only it increases, it increases the bad cholesterol, in a way it increases the risk of heart diseases as well, and it could be high in trans fat as well. So I think before we go further, I just want to take the next few minutes to really define what is ultra processed food and how it's different from processed food, because we do not want you to confuse that if you're eating a can of tuna, so it's bad for you. So it's not. So processed food, a canned sardine, a canned tuna, canned green beans, or your frozen broccoli, all of this is considered as processed food, because anyhow they go through a certain extent of process. So they are categorized under processed food. But what we are talking about here, that we want you to refrain from taking that much, is ultra processed food that is really going through a lot of processing, that it contains very minimal amount of whole foods, and it has a lot of additives added to it, some that you couldn't even pronounce the name of the ingredient. It's very high in sugar, it's very high in synthetic flavoring to make sure that it tastes good. And the ultra processed food is just being created with the objective to wanting to earn more money from the consumers. So to give you a few examples, it could be those packet snacks or junk food, and then
ice cream count?
It really depends what type of ice cream. There are ice cream that more like the gelato kind of. So I don't think it's considered as ultra processed.
Okay.
But it's still considered as processed. So, but even though it is still high in fats and sugar, and I would still urge you to not take that much. And there are certain kind of ice cream that is really ultra processed. So you couldn't really find much dairy in it. So there's a lot of vegetables oil that they found in it, flavoring. So I think back to basic is to basically read through your ingredient on your food label to really know what goes into the food that you are consuming. So and another example of ultra processed food can be your sodas, your sugary drinks, your packaged snacks, and your processed meats as well, your sausage,
the spam as well.
I wouldn't particularly mention brand, but
I thought spam is like the lunch generic like luncheon meat.
It's not.
It's not.
Okay, how about ham then? Just normal ham. Or burger patties?
Burger, ham, if it's really, from the
cold cut kind.
Yeah, the one is not so much of processed, but it's very high in sodium. So that's another topic. But for those who are really made from, minced grounded meat with lots of things added to it, I would say burger patty would be one of that. That's really high in the synthetic additives, and read your label so that you will know if the first few items is items that you couldn't pronounce the name, then most likely it's highly processed. It's ultra processed.
So here's like a PSA to our viewers out there: don't just grab an ingredient out of the shelf and check out. Next time, just try to read your labels and see for this kind of ingredients.
And now after we know what ultra processed food means and what are some of the examples of ultra processed, so they are usually low in fiber or no fiber at all, high in sugar, high in sodium, high in flavoring, and all of this, it feeds the bad bacteria, and it increases inflammations in the gut, and it then starts, like a domino effect that one lead to another. So you start facing gut issues and also other systems that depending on the health of your gut, skin, your immune system, your mental health, and so on and so forth.
Okay, that's interesting. So when we talk about food for the gut, first thing that always pops into our minds is actually fiber, is what we mentioned earlier. So what most people don't know is, the main three heroes, fiber, and also what you mentioned, prebiotics and probiotics.
So like for example, generally we do know that fiber is like good for regulating bowel movements as well, like manages cholesterol and prevents constipation. So for like, what is your recommended amount? Say someone who has problems like facing bowel movements and stuff. What is your recommended amount of dietary fiber to have? Like,
Okay, sure. It's not my recommendation. It's what's the Ministry of Health and all the mainstream dietary guideline has recommended. So if you look at the Western country, they actually put in a recommendation of 25 to 30 grams of fiber. But I think in Malaysia, our context, according to our RNI 2017, is 20 to 30 grams of fiber, which is slightly lower. I think it is more realistic of setting 20 to 30 grams of fiber, because now averagely Malaysian normally take about, I mean based on the latest study, averagely we only take about 19 grams of fiber, and which actually says that more than 50% of Malaysian adults do actually meet the recommended fiber intake. So yes, if I were to give you a number, it would be 20 grams to 30 grams of fiber. But I mean, this may not make any sense to you. You know what is 20 to 30 grams of fiber, right? If I were to put into perspective for you, so let's say basically you will have to eat a lot of whole grains. So let's say instead of white rice, go for brown rice, go for red rice or black rice if you are the fancy type, right? Go for quinoa and eating oats, and then your fruits and vegetables. It has to be in your diet a lot. At least half plate of your main meal have to consist of fruits and vegetables. And your snacks, you can have nuts and seeds, which is also a good source of fiber, on top of having good fats as well. And eating beans, which is also a good source of fiber and very underrated. I think beans is under-celebrated in Malaysian context. Yes, so basically you have to eat a lot of that things in your diet in order to achieve that 20 grams and beyond kind of fiber recommendation.
Don't forget to eat your veggies, just like our elders say.
And your beans.
Yes.
Yeah. Talking about beans, right? I actually don't blame our community of not eating enough, especially Chinese and Malay, because culturally we don't really eat much of this food. But for our Indian friends, they eat a lot of beans like lentils, dals, legumes, right? So I think being Malaysian, I think we have to then start really celebrate our Indian friends' food. You know, eat more dal. You can just incorporate like chickpeas into your stir fries. You can, you know, just open a can of kidney beans or beans into your salad and all that stuff, right? Or when you're making curries, just put some beans and chickpeas in it. It can be a good way to increase your beans intake.
Yeah, that's true. Also, maybe another addition would be like, let's say we eat out. Most of us we always eat roti canai, right? So instead of going for chicken curry or another type of curry, might as well you go for dal, like just roti canai and dal. It still tastes good, and you get your fiber.
Yep,
Really good. Tastes really good.
Okay, so this leads us to a question we had from our listener.
Wow.
Okay, so is it true that you can eat an unlimited amount of fiber, but would that cause diarrhea?
Wow, interesting questions, and I get this a lot from my patients as well. So, fiber is a good thing, but there's this thing that's too much of a good thing as well.
Yeah.
So when there is too much fiber that your gut or your gut microbiome could handle, it could then lead to gas, bloating, and even cramping as well, because your stomach is trying to handle the tons of fiber and can lead to muscle cramp in your stomach, in your intestine as well. So for those who are trying to increase your fiber intake, I do think you should do this just overnight, from eating very little vegetables, fruits, and very low fiber intake. And after this podcast, then you're very ambitious the next day, you want to achieve 30 grams of fiber. I think do it in a gradual way, because by just jumping, such drastic change, it will cause your gut microbiome or your gut to have a shock, right? Start to give you all those negative symptoms. symptoms. So start gradually. So if you don't eat vegetables at all, perhaps aim by quarter plate of vegetables, having 1 fruit a day. If you are not, if you have never tried whole grain before, never been eating oats or brown rice, you can go for 50-50. And I think the most practical way is be sensitive and listen to how your body reacts to it. If you start to have fluctuations, if you have cramping and all, you know that maybe you have gone a little bit too fast. So just take it slow. This is the most common and practical advice that my patients find that I give to them when they're wanting to eat more fiber in their diet.
Okay, on the topic of fiber, so like as us student dietitians, we learn that there are 2 types of dietary fiber. So there's one soluble fiber, and these are examples of like your fruits, veggies, and also legumes. And at the same time, the other end is insoluble fibers. So those are like our oats, whole grains, nuts and seeds that you mentioned. So how do you think that those 2 types of fiber benefit our health? So let's hear from you first.
You have pretty much laid the context, right? There are two main types of fiber, soluble and insoluble. Soluble means that they actually dilute or they dissolve in water and they sort of form like a gel-like substance, right? And this gel-like substance is what that helps to reduce cholesterol and helps one to better regulate their blood sugar. So this is soluble fiber. Insoluble fiber are what we look at, fiber that doesn't dissolve, but when it goes into the gut or our intestine, small intestine or colon, right? So it get ferment and it actually increase the bulk size of our stool. It actually shorten the transit time of the stool passing. So which means that our stool pass faster, and when our stool pass faster, the chances of our gut absorbing the toxins back into our system from the stool, right, will be decreases. And this in a way also helps us to better detox, in a way, helps us to eliminate the toxins from our body more efficiently. And because of this insoluble fiber also helps to promote bowel regularity, that we go to the toilet more in a more regular manner. This is soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. We talk about soluble fiber, certain soluble fiber like inulin or oligosaccharides, so they fall under prebiotics. So prebiotics are what fermented or consumed by these little tiny good bacteria in our body. So when during the consumptions of these prebiotics by this gut microbiome, or when they are during fermentation, this process actually secrete byproducts or certain health byproducts or element, to name a few, like short-chain fatty acids. These short-chain fatty acids can actually improve our metabolic health, and it has proven to be able to help reduce the inflammation in our body. So this is some other extra perks of getting enough fiber. Not just any kind of fiber, is your soluble and insoluble fiber in your system, and these are the benefits and value added to your diet.
You also pretty much answered our next question.
Oh, really?
We had, and it was actually highly requested. Because actually we wanted to know the difference between pre and probiotics.
Okay.
So I think like throughout our whole conversation, we sort of covered it and gave you the gist of it. Right?
Okay.
So next question. And okay, this is a whole different thing. But before we move on, I know that kimchi yogurt and miso soup is actually a good source of probiotics. But I think us Malaysians, we don't really have that in our diet unless like you're someone who favors this kind of food and stuff. So Khoon Meng, are you a fan of these kinds of food?
Yeah, actually I do love miso. Every time we call the Japanese one, I do love a good bowl of miso soup. I think but then like what Jyosheeka has said, it's actually quite hard to find, especially within the Malaysian diet. So it's like I think we've discussed just now for the Indian cuisine, you can try to incorporate your dals, your lentils into your diet in a way that it's more Malaysian based. So I think that one is also as well. I think it's also rich in is it rich in prebiotics as well?
Yeah.
Like the meats?
Yep.
So it is. Oh, okay. So it's like we can incorporate that into our meals.
Yeah. I understand where you come from, right, in terms of your questions, because when we name the type of food that is high in probiotics, none of them is very culturally near to our culture, right? Yeah, I think first of all, I think Malaysia, or any part of the world, right, we have sort of moved towards international cuisine. So we are not stranger to Japanese food. We are not strangers to Korean food, but they do have pakcik who've never tried a kimchi before. So I think at Malaysia context, some of the fermented food that I can name is like tempoyak. It's fermented durian paste.
Fermented durian paste?
Yeah. So I think this is also considered as fermented food, right? So in terms of beverage, I'm a big fan of kombucha. So and I do brew my own kombucha as well.
Okay.
It's very therapeutic and it tastes fun and it tastes nice. Yeah.
It's nice kombucha.
Yeah. Give it a try. If you're new to this, do some research and not just is a good source of probiotics, but kombucha also, because it's fermented from tea, right? So it also has all those phytonutrients that is rich in tea, the antioxidants, right? So kombucha is one of them. But if you really find it difficult to incorporate fermented food in your diet, I think the next will be probiotics, supplements. Yeah, supplements is one of the way out. A more practical and convenient way to help you introduce live cultures into your diet, or some probiotics drink, like certain brands that start with Y, certain brands that start with B. All that also a good source of probiotics as well. Yeah.
How about regulasi though?
Yeah, because it's made from yogurt base, right? Yeah. So I think that's a good source of probiotics as well. And just now we talk about prebiotics, right? To also name a few food that is high in prebiotics, because just now we only mentioned inulin and oligosaccharides. So maybe the audience is not so familiar. Where can I get this from? So for example, like garlic and onion or asparagus and banana, they are a good source of prebiotics. So just incorporate more of them in your diet, then you should be able to get more prebiotics in your diet.
So because we're talking about beans, right? It's also does barley drink or soybean drink count as high in prebiotics as well?
I have not studied that before, but if they are high in soluble fiber, the chances of them being prebiotics is high as well. So in order to help you to cover all bases, I would suggest you to just have a diversified whole food diet. So have your barley, have your beans, have your whole grains, have your oats, have your fruits and vegetables, have nuts and seeds, so that you cover all bases. So I think that's the most practical way to make sure that you have enough fiber and also prebiotics as well in your diet.
Variety is always key.
Yeah. I think when we are too carried away by prebiotics and probiotics, sometimes we just forget about you have to get your basic right first before you focus on this functional food to taking care of your gut health. If you eat a lot of junk food, if you don't eat enough of your macros, your carbs, your protein and your fats, right, and you then start taking all sorts of prebiotics and probiotic supplements, I don't think it's going to help. So it's first get your basics right, then only look into this functional food on top of your basics.
Let's look at our next question.
Right?
Next question.
Okay, so we have a question on lactose intolerance.
Okay.
So I am lactose intolerant. What foods are good for me to eat?
Okay. As its name suggests, so basically you have to avoid food that has lactose. So namely dairy products. Yeah. So what are some of the substitutes or other food to replace dairy with? We have to first know what other nutrients are rich in dairy products. So first is protein, second is calcium, and also mineral as well. So then we then start to look at other food that is also rich in these nutrients. So for calcium, soy milk, fortified soy milk, or green leafy vegetables is also a good source of calcium as well. Protein, I don't think I need to mention much. Egg, meat, lean meat, nuts, seeds, tofu is a good source of protein. And minerals, then I think we can look at egg yolk. And I think if you can eat according to your food pyramid or healthy eating plate, you should be able to get all your nutrients needed, even though you have lactose intolerance. But nowadays in market, there are a lot of lactose-free dairy products as well. And fermented dairy product, the lactose content is also found out to be lower. For example, like cheese and also yogurt. So sometimes the lactose level is not as high as a normal milk. So when someone has lactose intolerance, eat yogurt, they might not actually experience any side effects of bloating and diarrhea. Yeah.
It's not always a bad thing, I think, for lactose intolerance. Because usually some people, when they say, "Oh, I have lactose intolerance," they always sound too sad about it. Well, not necessarily. Now you heard it from him. You can always, have something to compensate for what you've lost.
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, I'm sad. I mean, if you have lactose intolerance but you're a big fan of dairy, then you just need to look for other way out to get the nutrients that you usually get from milk. I think sometimes it's really food preference. Then I think but again, you can always substitute and alternate with something else to make sure that you still get your balanced profile of your macro and micronutrients.
Okay.
So now that we've explored these gut-friendly foods,
Okay.
I'll ask Khoon Meng first.
Yeah.
What would you advise those who want to incorporate gut-friendly foods into their meals?
I would
Simple advice from a student dietitian.
From the student dietitian. If you've been hearing what we've talked about, I'm pretty sure you have a rough idea on how to incorporate the foods that we've mentioned just now into the diet. So maybe we just maybe for me, I would think that just get what Georgen has said, to get your basics right first. Do a base understanding of what foods are helpful for your gut health, and then to try to see if you are able to incorporate them into your daily meals. Then once you are more, I would say you're more familiar with it, then just experiment with what you eat. Just go for today I want to do this, today I want to try something else. But the most important thing is to get your base, your facts, at least to understand them first. Then only we should try for more experimental stuff.
That's a pretty solid advice right there. Okay, how about you? So let's say from a dietitian's perspective, what would you advise people?
To start incorporating more gut-friendly food into the diet. So I think to sort of sum up what are some of these food looks like. Number one is fiber-rich food, fermented food, and also food that has, fermented food that is high in probiotics. And also when we talk about fiber, it's about insoluble fiber, soluble fiber, and prebiotics as well. And I think then how are we able to incorporate this food into our diet, right? First of all is to gradually incorporating them into your diet. Not too drastic, because as we mentioned earlier, if you have not eaten any whole grains and vegetables and fruits, and suddenly you are eating 5 to 6 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, this sudden increase of fiber can cause your body to be having a difficult time to handle this sudden surge of fiber. So number one, be sensitive to your body needs and start gradually. Number one. Number two, the same goes to fermented food as well. I think is give it a try. If you've never tried fermented food before, also again give it a try, a bite or two. If you find yourself okay, then you will again start to increase the amount. And secondly is cooking as well. I think I also miss this out when talking about the different dietary factor. So if you are someone who cooks at home, try to embrace more natural herbs and spices because they are very high in antioxidants, which can also help reduce the inflammations in our gut. In a way, it can help the microbiome in our gut to flourish as well. And also, needless to say, reduce your eating of ultra-processed food, which is high in sugar, salt, and unhealthy fats, which feed the bad bacteria in your body. that again jeopardize your gut health. So these are some of the advice that I could give for someone who are looking into incorporating more gut-friendly food in their diet.
Yeah, that's a good way to sum it all up. So aside from that, do you have any other advice for those, aside from just diet itself, how can we improve our gut health?
Yes, again, gut health is not only determined by the food that you eat, your lifestyle also plays a very important factor as well. Gut health is highly related to mental health, it's highly related to stress management. It's a vice versa, it's a two-way interaction, it's not one way. So if you're able to get enough sleep, if you're able to manage your stress, so in a way it also helps you to take care of your gut health as well. So get your 6 to 9 hours of sleep, and then reduce your screen time.
Okay.
Alright, and then manage your stress. Talk to someone if you need someone if you need to be listened to. Talk to someone that you trust, and then aromatherapy, music therapy. Just find a point where you are comfortable with your environment, not just externally but also internally as well. Find peace, and then be physically active. Because research has also shown that being physically active not only helps you to be cardiac healthy, but it can also ensure that your gut can flourish as well. So beyond food, so all of these factors comes into the pictures as well.
So for that 6 to 9 hours of sleep and reduce screen time, students, let's try to implement that, I guess.
Yeah. Do it gradually.
We're fine. So before we wrap up, Khoon Meng, what are some take-home messages you have for our listeners?
For our listeners, okay, so as throughout this whole episode, I think we've discussed for improving our gut health aspect and also maintaining our gut health, it is not just the food that we eat, but we also have to look out at other factors like your physical activity and also taking the time to care about your mental health, because there is, like what Georgen has said, there's a correlation to that. So I think that when we are going, when you're after listening to this episode, when you're thinking about how do I improve my gut health, maybe other than trying to eat the food that is high in prebiotics or the fibers and all those stuff, maybe try to go for other aspects as well. Maybe go take a walk, or maybe sleep early later, and then just to get enough of the sleep. So there are many factors, and then you just have to start slowly. Then once you build up that habit, then once after that is done, then you can have a good gut health. That's it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So making small gradual changes, as both of you mentioned, can lead to a lot of significant improvements in our overall well-being. So as we wrap up today's episode, I hope our listeners have gained some valuable insights into our world of gut health. So thank you, Georgen, and thank you, Khoon Meng, for coming onto the show again and for sharing your expertise. So before we sign off, do check us out on our social media. Details are attached down below. And thank you for tuning in to today's episode. So we'll see you on the next one. This is INDSA Podcast, inspiring everyone to choose the food that brings good.